On this channel, we provide useful programming information with practical code examples. This time, it's about CSS properties related to tables. You can learn how to design table layouts, borders, caption positions, and more. Enabling subtitles will make the code descriptions easier to understand. Please make use of it. First, let's take a look at the table layout property. Table layout is a CSS property that controls the layout method of HTML tables. This property allows you to specify how to calculate the column widths of a table. In the Table Layout Auto class, column widths are determined based on the content within each cell. Column widths vary according to the content, and cells with long content will widen the column. The Table Layout Fixed class uses table layout fixed. Each column's width is set equally, and the width does not change even if the content is long. Table layout mainly has two values, auto and fixed. Specifying auto automatically adjusts the table's column widths based on the content. The browser reads all the content of each cell and determines each column's width based on that content. This may result in slower rendering of the entire table. Specifying fixed means each column's width is determined by the width of the cells in the first row or by the width attribute. The entire table is drawn immediately and the column widths are determined without reading all the content. Performance improves even when there is a lot of data in the table. With auto, the table width adjusts automatically according to the content. A more dynamic layout is possible, but performance may worsen with complex tables. With fixed, column widths are fixed, maintaining a consistent layout regardless of the table content. While performance improves, content may be truncated if it does not fit the width. Next, let's look at the border collapse property. Border collapse is a CSS property that controls how the borders between table cells are displayed. It is used to define how the borders between table cells are displayed. When using border collapse separate, there will be distinct borders and spaces between cells. The spacing between cells is adjusted with the border spacing property. In this example, a space of 10 px is set between each cell. When using border collapse, the borders of adjacent cells are merged and displayed as a single border. As a result, the table has a more cohesive design. As in this example, the border collapse property mainly has two values, separate and collapse. When specifying separate, each cell border is drawn separately, and there is space between the cells. It is used when you want to clearly distinguish the borders, as the cell borders are displayed apart. The space between cells can be adjusted with the border spacing property. When specifying collapse, the borders of adjacent cells are merged and displayed as a single border. Since the borders overlap, the entire table has a unified appearance. rows and columns of the table are displayed neatly, making it suitable for a simpler design. Next, let's look at the border spacing property. The border spacing property is a CSS property for specifying the spacing between cells in an HTML table. It helps adjust the space between table cells and control the visual margin. In this example, cell spacing is added as 5px horizontally and 20px vertically. The border spacing property only takes effect on tables where border collapse separate is specified. If border collapse is specified, this property is ineffective. Values for the border spacing property are specified in pixels or other length units. It can be specified in the following two formats. When specifying a single value, the spacing between rows, top and bottom, and columns, left and right, is set to the same value. In this example, a space of 10px is added between all cells. When specifying two values, the first value sets the horizontal spacing between columns, and the second value sets the vertical spacing between rows. In this example, the space between columns is 10px, and the space between rows is 20px. Next, let's look at the caption side property. The caption side property is a CSS property used to specify where the caption element of an HTML table is displayed. Specifying top displays the caption at the top of the table. This is the default setting, and captions are often used as the title or description of the table. Specifying bottom displays the caption at the bottom of the table. Use this when you want to place explanations below the table. Next, let's look at the empty cells property. The empty cells is a CSS property to control whether empty cells in an HTML table are displayed. By default, empty cells in a table also display borders, but you can use this property to control the display. Specifying show will display empty cells as well. This is the default behavior. Specifying hide makes empty cells invisible. Borders and backgrounds of the cells will not be drawn. The source code for this video can be downloaded from the official website. If you like, please visit the URL in the description to aid your learning. If you found this video helpful, I would appreciate your support by subscribing to the channel.